Hola, hola. Welcome to El Grano con Nora, real talk on power and possibility without all the fluff. I'm Nora Vargas, and for over 30 years, I've been on the front lines navigating crisis and breaking barriers. From being an executive assistant to a community organizer to a CEO, and most recently, 12 years as an elected official. Yep, 12 years making decisions, carrying responsibility, and navigating it all. And all of it without a playbook. And so as I was thinking about season two, I thought, I really want to focus this podcast, the second season of the podcast, in something about, continue to do real talk, but I want to have real conversations about what leadership, power, responsibility, and the possibilities of what it means for all of us and what it means to keep believing and redefining the American dream despite it all. I think all of us know that it seems to be getting harder, and navigating these spaces in this moment in time really requires us bringing a different lens into leadership, because the reality is that the world doesn't look the same for everyone, and it definitely doesn't look the same for Latinas, and nor does it for women of color. And we need to talk about that. We don't talk about that enough. And how many times have you been told, make sure that you're leaning in, and then you let them and be imperfect and be vulnerable, be your authentic self. And when you do that, ¿qué pasa? Te dan una patada en ya sabes dónde, and out you go. So the question here is, how do we navigate that? How do we begin, or how do we lead on our own terms, right? That's what's really critical and important, because we still have to operate in these systems that weren't built for us. And what we do is we learn them, we navigate them, we push them, and sometimes we dismantle them, and we actually create new pathways. Pero bueno, como dicen, oh my gosh, that's very exhausting, but it's real. And so that's what the season is about. It's about the lessons from leaning on the front lines, not the theory, but what actually holds. And so I'm excited. Today's topic on Real Talk is going to be leadership. And leadership, because for a long time we were told it looked like climbing a ladder. It's this idea that you're step by step, title by title, moving up. A veces, no terminamos un trabajo cuando ya estamos pensando en what else is next, right? So you became a manager. Now, how do I become a director? You became a director. How do I become a CEO? Like there's always this next. ¿Qué sigue? And so I've been thinking a lot about that. I've been thinking about, this idea, is climbing the ladder still a thing? And I don't have all the answers, but I do know that the more time I've spent really leading, the more I realize that leadership doesn't look like a straight line. And I think that's extremely important. It doesn't look like a ladder. It actually, to me, as I've been in these leadership spaces and community spaces and boardrooms and in government chambers, and in each of these moments, leadership looks very different. Sometimes there's uncertainty. Sometimes it looks like you're walking into a room where no one has the answers, including yourself. And this idea that you're going to, como dicen, fake it till you make it, I think that's like bad advice. And I actually really believe that what you need to do is really look at how we make decisions, understanding that sometimes not everyone's going to go agree. I believe that we need to start thinking about how we build consensus and really listening to people, because things are so polarized. And it's not just in government and in politics. It's polarized in different ways. And so as we're moving forward, as we're thinking about this work, and sometimes we complicate things, but to me, when I think about leadership and what it looks like as we're moving forward, is something, I don't want to call it simple, but it's something as pragmatic as checking in. But not the performative checking in, right? Voy a agarrar mi libretita and I'm going to check in on you. And, when you become a manager, when you become a director, when you become an executive, there's lists of things that you always have to do. And I think in this moment in time, It can't be a performative check-in. It has to be real checking in on your teams, on our communities, on all of the people who are carrying the weight of decisions that are being made. Because I really believe that when you are on the front lines, especially at this moment in time, we have to be nimble enough to be able to lead in different ways. And I've always said, I haven't done it perfectly always, or maybe never, but I've learned that it's important to listen to the folks who are on the ground, because people may be coming from different perspectives, and sometimes the tension is there and it shows up even before it's named. And if you're not paying attention, you miss it. And sometimes in the hustle and bustle of being a leader or being in a leadership role, you're on the go so much that sometimes we forget to stop and really lead with intention and lead by paying attention. So it's really about asking what's happening here. What is it that people are not saying out loud? Who hasn't spoken yet? What is it that I'm not seeing? And those things that don't come with a title and sometimes don't get applauses for it, but it's about being real. And I really believe that the truth about all of this is that leadership isn't always going to be visible. Sometimes, there was a time I remember when I was on the board of supervisors, one of the folks asked me, we were going to be doing a program in the county, and they said, supervisor, in order for us to be able to move this program forward and give you the credit for it, we're going to have to wait, for the process, and it'll kind of be a couple of months, and then you can do a press release and you can announce it and all that. And then I said, but we need it now, right? We needed the program now because people needed the program now. And they said, well, yeah, but if you want to do it that way, your name is not going to be on it and you won't get the credit. And I remember saying, like, I don't care, just do it. Háganlo, no me importa. And he was super surprised, because he says, well, most elected officials want their name on this thing. And I'm not sharing this with you to say, mira yo que fregona. No. I'm just sharing this with you because I really believe that sometimes leadership means being behind the scenes. And I'm not saying no, don't take your credit, but sometimes getting things done, GSD, getting shit done is really, really important. And sometimes your name is not going to be on it. And so, like I said, leadership sometimes isn't always about being visible. Sometimes it's something you have to do for the greater good, and being able to move forward. And so I wanted to share that story because I believe that sometimes we need to be okay with that. And so in this idea of it being a ladder and we're just moving up, it's these kinds of concepts of community and building together and doing what's good for the greater good versus just for the me and the now. I think this idea of the ladder is extremely incomplete, because what it doesn't do is it doesn't take all these things into account. And so as I've been thinking a lot about leadership and what it looks like and how we redefine it, because honest truth is that I didn't have an actual, playbook when I started this. And so as I'm thinking about it, I think that maybe this is no longer a ladder what we're meant to be climbing. Maybe it's more like a tree, because I've been thinking a lot of metaphors. Thinking about more of it as a tree, right? And I think a tree, porque da vida, and it's much more, los árboles dan fruta, there's more that comes from it, right? So I think about being grounded in values and really rooted in who you are. And then the branches represent really this idea of going in different directions, not just one. And it allows us to really expand into new spaces, new experiences, new ways of leading. And to me, I really believe that that's what leadership on the front lines looks like. And so as you think about it more, and we think about our segment of no manches, I think about this idea that we've always been sold the idea that leadership is a ladder. And so the goal is to keep climbing. And so once you get there, everything is supposed to be clear. Ya te vas a saber todo. You will have all the answers. And no manches, so that's not how it works. The higher you go, the more complex it gets. It actually gets a little bit more, it gets lonelier, and there's more responsibilities, more pressure, more people depending on your decisions. There's a lot of good that comes with it too, right? Being able to make the tough decisions, etc. But sometimes when you climb that ladder, there's less clarity. So this idea that leadership is just about moving up, as I think about it from this idea of no manches, is like, it really is an incomplete. It's not really what it looks like. So as I think about el granito de oro con los que los dejaría, right? This grain of a little bit of wisdom around this is that I want to make sure that we think about this, particularly as we're leading through crisis and this ever-changing complex world, that leadership isn't what sometimes gets recognized. It's what gets carried. It's making sure that we're paying attention, that we're asking the hard questions, that we're okay with sitting with uncertainty, right? That we're making decisions, sometimes without all of the information, but we do the best that we can to the best of our ability, that we protect and lift up the people who have not been seen or who have different perspectives, even when it's not popular. And I believe in my heart that we need to do more of that. And that means that sometimes we go opposite of folks that should be aligned, but sometimes are not. But we need to question more. So this week, reflect on this. What does leadership actually look like in your life right now? Not the version that you're taught, not all the like self-help books that we've all learned about, and they're all fabulous, right? But I really believe it's our turn to redefine what this looks like. And actually the version that you're leading, right? And I've heard many women leaders, Latina leaders, women of color leaders who say, it's important to me that my family comes first. It's important to me that I spend time with my friends. It's important to me that I fill my cup. And whatever those boundaries are for you, I think that's really what I want to be able to unpack as we're having these conversations in season 2. And so I want to say thank you. Thank you for listening to The American Dream, Despite It All, the second season and this first episode of Al Grano. We're going to dig deeper throughout the future episodes. And like I said, if the latter isn't enough, then, what actually is leadership? Because leadership on the front lines is really about learning how to lead in real time and having the courage to keep believing and redefining this American dream and what it looks like for you. Thank you for being here. This is Al Grano, the American Dream Despite It All. I love to hear from you. Let's keep going. Share it with your friends and your family. Hopefully you're enjoying it and have a